Most men don't realize this, but they are constantly giving away their power. Not through big mistakes, but through small, automatic reactions. A message that doesn't get answered fast enough, a comment that feels slightly disrespectful, a shift in tone that triggers overthinking. And without noticing, they respond to everything. They explain, they react, they engage, and in doing so, they slowly lose something far more valuable than the moment itself: their attention. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus once said, "We have 2 ears and 1 mouth so that we can listen twice as much as we speak." But most people live the opposite way. They react more than they observe. They speak more than they think. They give attention before they decide if something even deserves it. And this becomes especially visible in how men deal with women, not because women are the problem, but because attention is the currency of all human interaction. When a man gives it too easily, too quickly, and without control, he doesn't just lose focus, he changes how he is perceived. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You always own the option of having no opinion." And that idea is more powerful than it sounds, because the ability to ignore, to not react, to not engage, to not give energy is not weakness, it is discipline. In this video, we're going to break down 5 powerful reasons why ignoring is one of the most underrated forms of strength, especially in a world where everyone is competing for your attention. And more importantly, how mastering this skill quietly changes how you think, how you feel, and how women respond to you. Let's begin. Reason number 1. Ignoring saves your mental energy. Most men don't lose their strength in big moments. They lose it in small, constant reactions. A message that pulls their attention, a comment that lingers longer than it should, a situation that doesn't really matter but still occupies their mind. And without realizing it, their mental energy gets drained piece by piece. The Stoic philosopher Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." The problem is not what happens. The problem is how much of your attention you give to it. Because your attention works like a battery. It has limits. Every argument you entertain, every distraction you follow, every unnecessary reaction you engage in takes something from you. And when that pattern repeats throughout the day, you don't just feel tired, you feel scattered. Seneca once warned, "To be everywhere is to be nowhere." A man who gives his attention to everything ends up fully present in nothing. This becomes even more visible in how many men interact with women. They overanalyze messages, they replay conversations, they react too quickly to every shift in tone, not because the situation demands it, but because they haven't learned what to ignore. And that lack of control doesn't just drain energy, it changes how they are perceived. Because a man who cannot control his attention cannot project stability. But when you begin to ignore what is unnecessary, not out of ego, not out of avoidance, but out of clarity, something shifts. Your mind becomes quieter, your focus sharpens, your presence feels stronger. And for the first time, your attention is no longer being pulled in every direction. It is being directed. And that is where real control begins. Which leads to the second reason, because saving your energy is only the beginning. What you choose to ignore also changes how you feel moment to moment. Reason number 2, ignoring reduces stress and stabilizes your emotions. Most stress doesn't come from major life events. It comes from the accumulation of small, unnecessary thoughts, things you replay, things you imagine, things that don't need an answer but still take up space in your mind. A message that feels off, a tone that seems different, a situation you keep trying to figure out. And without noticing, your mind never rests. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus once said, "Men are disturbed not by things, but by the views which they take of them." In other words, it's not the event itself that creates stress, it's your interpretation and your attachment to it. When you react to everything, every message, every shift, every uncertainty, you create a constant state of tension. But when you learn to ignore what doesn't truly matter, something changes. You interrupt that cycle. You stop feeding thoughts that don't deserve your energy. And over time, your emotional state becomes more stable. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it." This is where ignoring becomes a form of discipline. Not suppression, not pretending you don't care, but choosing not to engage with thoughts that don't serve you. And this shows up clearly in how men handle interactions with women. Instead of overthinking every delay, instead of reacting to every emotional fluctuation, they remain steady. They don't rush to fix what isn't broken. They don't assume the worst. They don't let uncertainty control their mood. And that emotional stability does something powerful. It removes pressure from the interaction and from themselves. Because a man who is not constantly reacting internally does not create chaos externally. He becomes calmer, more grounded, more predictable in the right way. And that kind of presence is rare. But this is only the second layer, because once your mind becomes quieter, your attention stops being scattered. And that leads directly to the next shift, your ability to focus. Reason number 3, ignoring sharpens your focus. Most men don't struggle with discipline. They struggle with distraction. Not because they lack ability, but because their attention is constantly being pulled in different directions. Notifications, conversations, random thoughts, emotional reactions that interrupt what they were doing. And every time attention shifts, something is lost. Time, clarity, momentum. The Stoic philosopher Seneca wrote, "While we are postponing, life speeds by." But in many cases, men are not even consciously postponing. They are simply being interrupted over and over again. Each distraction feels small, but together they fragment the mind. You start something, then check your phone. You try to focus, then remember a conversation. You sit down to work, but your attention is somewhere else. And by the end of the day, you feel busy, but not effective. Marcus Aurelius observed, "You can only lose what you cling to." And attention works the same way. The more things you allow yourself to engage with, the less control you have over where your mind stays. This is where ignoring becomes a skill. Not reacting to every notification, not checking every message immediately, not allowing every thought to interrupt your focus. At first, it feels uncomfortable because you're used to constant stimulation, but over time, something changes. Your mind stops jumping, your work becomes deeper, your actions become more intentional. And this shift becomes especially important in how men handle interactions with women, because many lose focus not from the interaction itself, but from the mental loop that follows. Replaying conversations, checking for responses, letting one interaction affect their entire day. When a man cannot detach, he cannot concentrate. But when he learns to ignore what doesn't require his attention in that moment, he regains control over his time and his direction. And that kind of focus doesn't just improve productivity, it changes how a man carries himself. More present, less reactive,
more grounded. Which leads to the next reason, because when you stop reacting constantly, people start reacting differently to you.
Reason number 4. Ignoring changes how people treat you. Not everyone is looking for connection. Some people are looking for a reaction. They complain, they provoke, they test boundaries in subtle ways. Not always consciously, but consistently. And most men fall into the same pattern. They respond immediately, they explain themselves, they try to correct, defend, or prove something. And without realizing it, they reward the behavior. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus once said, "If someone succeeds in provoking you, realize that your mind is complicit in the provocation." Because the moment you react emotionally, you give control away. You signal that your state can be influenced. But when you choose not to react, not out of pride, not out of coldness, but out of control, something very different happens. The dynamic shifts. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." In modern terms, that means you don't match chaos with chaos. You don't respond to every push. You don't engage in every unnecessary exchange. And over time, people adjust, because behavior that gets no reaction loses its purpose. This is especially visible in how men interact with women. Sometimes what appears as mixed signals or emotional shifts is simply a search for response. Not manipulation, but human nature. People notice what moves you. They notice what gets your attention. But when a man doesn't react to every small change, when he doesn't rush to explain himself, when he doesn't chase every emotional fluctuation, he communicates something without saying a word: stability. And stability changes how people treat you. They test less. They respect boundaries more. They become more aware of their own behavior, not because you demanded it, but because your lack of reaction made it clear. There are lines that won't be crossed. But there is one final layer to this, because beyond how others treat you, ignoring changes something deeper: how you experience your own life.
Reason number 5. Ignoring creates inner peace. At some point, it stops being about other people and becomes about your own mind. Because the real cost of reacting to everything is not what happens externally. It's the noise you carry internally. Unfinished thoughts, unnecessary worries, moments that should have passed but didn't. And over time, that noise becomes your default state. Restless, distracted, never fully at ease. The Stoic philosopher Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Nowhere can man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul." But most people never reach that state, not because it's impossible, but because they never stop engaging with everything around them, every opinion, every comment, every small disturbance. Epictetus also said, "Don't demand that things happen as you wish, but wish that they happen as they happen." There is a quiet strength in that idea, because peace is not created by controlling the outside world. It's created by not needing to react to it. When you begin to ignore what is unnecessary, something shifts internally. Your thoughts slow down. Your emotional reactions soften. Your mind becomes less crowded. You stop carrying things that don't belong to you. And this becomes especially powerful in how a man experiences interactions with women. He doesn't overanalyze every detail. He doesn't attach his mood to every response. He doesn't let uncertainty disturb his center. Not because he doesn't care, but because he knows what deserves his energy and what doesn't. And that clarity creates something rare, a sense of calm that isn't dependent on outcomes. Because when your peace is no longer tied to what others do, you stop being controlled by what they do. And that is the real power behind ignoring. Which brings us to the practical side of this, Because understanding it is one thing, learning how to apply it is what changes everything.
Practical. How to practice ignoring in daily life. Understanding the power of ignoring is one thing, but without practice, it remains just an idea. The real shift happens when you start applying it in small, everyday moments. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus said, "Don't explain your philosophy, embody it." Ignoring is not something you talk about, it's something you do consistently. 1. Limit unnecessary input. Notifications, random updates, endless scrolling. Turn off what isn't essential, even for a few hours a day. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Very little is needed to make a happy life. It is all within yourself. Less input, less noise, more control." 2. Don't react to minor negativity. Someone says something rude. A comment feels slightly off. If it's not important, let it pass. No reply, no correction, no emotional reaction. Epictetus reminded, "If someone speaks badly of you, do not defend yourself against the accusations, but reply, 'He was ignorant of my other faults, else he would not have mentioned these alone.'" Not everything deserves a response. 3. Define your daily priorities. Each morning, decide what actually matters today. Pick 2 or 3 important things. Everything else becomes secondary and easier to ignore. Seneca wrote, "If a man knows not to which port he sails, no wind is favorable." Clarity makes ignoring natural. 4. Interrupt negative thought loops. Some distractions are external. Others come from your own mind. Overthinking, replaying conversations, imagining outcomes. When it starts, pause and redirect. Say to yourself, "Not now," and return to what you're doing. 5. Filter your environment. Your attention is shaped by what you're exposed to daily. Accounts you follow, content you consume, people you engage with. If something constantly drains you, remove it, mute it, unfollow it, step away from it. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." Choose what colors your mind. 6. Use the 1-week rule. When a small conflict appears, ask yourself, will this matter in a week? If the answer is no, let it go. No discussion, no escalation, just silence and movement forward. And as simple as these steps sound, they require something most people avoid: consistency. Because ignoring is not about one big decision, it's about hundreds of small ones every day. And over time, those decisions reshape your focus, your emotional state, and how others experience you. Which leads us to the final thought. Final thought. The power of ignoring. Most men underestimate how much of their life is shaped by what they react to. Not the big decisions, not the major turning points, but the small, repeated moments where they give their attention away without thinking. A comment that didn't matter, a situation that didn't require a response, a thought that should have passed but was entertained instead. And over time, these small reactions accumulate. They fragment your focus. They disturb your peace. They quietly take control of your internal state. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus once said, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid." Because the truth is, when you stop reacting to everything, some people won't understand it. They may expect a reply. They may expect engagement. They may even interpret your silence the wrong way. But Stoicism was never about managing other people's expectations. It was about mastering your own responses. Ignoring, in that sense, is not passive. It is a decision.
a conscious filter you apply to reality. You begin to ask, does this deserve my energy? Does this require my attention? Or is this just another distraction pulling me away from what matters? Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The tranquility that comes when you stop caring what they say or think or do, only what you do. That is the essence of it. Because when you stop reacting to everything around you, your attention stops being scattered. It becomes intentional. You are no longer pulled into every conversation. You are no longer affected by every shift in mood. You are no longer carrying things that were never yours to carry." And that creates something most people are missing: space. Space to think clearly, space to act deliberately, space to remain steady even when things around you are not. This becomes especially noticeable in how a man moves through interactions. He doesn't rush to respond. He doesn't feel the need to fill every silence. He doesn't attach his emotional state to every outcome. Not because he doesn't care, but because he understands something deeper. Not everything deserves a reaction. And that restraint, that quiet discipline, is what creates presence. Seneca once wrote, "Nothing is so bitter that a calm mind cannot find comfort in it." A calm mind is not built by controlling the world. It is built by choosing what to engage with and what to ignore. And over time, this changes more than just how you feel. It changes how you live. You become less reactive, more focused, more grounded in your own direction. And yes, people notice, including women. Not because you are trying to influence them, but because you are no longer being influenced by everything around you. So instead of asking how to control situations or how to respond better, ask a simpler question: what no longer deserves your attention? Because the moment you answer that honestly and act on it consistently, your life becomes quieter, clearer, and far more under your control. Thank you for watching Stoic Wisdom today. If this perspective resonates with you, subscribe to us for more insights on discipline, clarity, and self-mastery. And let me know in the comments, what is one thing you're ready to stop reacting to? Until next time, stay focused, stay grounded, stay stoic.